Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. All year long, there was this crime wave going on where people were getting stuff stolen out of their locked lockers. Not everyone got hit, but enough people that you definitely knew somebody it had happened to. The school's excuse was that it was our fault for sharing locker combos with friends. They even charged us every single time we had to get a new combo because of a theft, like it was automatically our own damn fault. It was such a racket. Well, my fancy graphing calculator got swiped out of my locker one day. I never gave my combo to anybody though, mostly because my friends were total jerks and we were always messing with each other. So I was out like $120 for the calculator itself, plus another $120 fee that the school charged to get the lock changed. That's 2018 money too, so it was a pretty hefty hit. If you ever had to buy one of those TI-84 calculators back then, you know they were insanely overpriced. Anyway, my dad's drinking buddy Jerry happened to be a county detective. I'll just call him Detective Jerry going forward. He went in to talk to the principal about looking into these locker thefts and getting the security footage from when my calculator went missing. But the principal completely brushed him off, saying it was a non-existent problem and that I must have slipped up on my combo. He told Jerry he'd need a warrant for any camera footage. Well, Jerry got the warrant, but then the school tried fighting it in court under some BS claim about student privacy. That's when the real revenge plan kicked in. Detective Jerry shows up at my house one day with this laptop in a carrying case. He's like, "Stash this in your locker and spread the word you got a brand new laptop, you hear?" Okay. I didn't get it, but I did what he said. 3 days later, I go to my locker between classes, and the laptop, the case, everything is gone. There was even a half-drunk bottle of Coke missing, along with some pens and stuff. I quickly text Jerry to let him know the laptop got boosted. His reply, "Stand by for the show." "Oh, and you reported the theft, got it?" "Got it," I typed back, still confused. I finished out the rest of my day, not hearing anything else. The next morning, Detective Jerry rolls up to the school with 3 uniformed cops and they pull this one kid, Marcus, out of class along with his mom who worked in the front office. The principal was fuming, screaming how Jerry had no right dragging people out, blah blah blah. Turns out, there was a tracking device hidden in that laptop case. Jerry had used it to get a warrant to search Marcus's house since the laptop was worth over $1,000, making it a felony theft. The next afternoon, Jerry sets up this whole tent right outside the school with a banner. "If you were a victim of locker theft, come see me." By the next morning, Marcus and his mom were literally front-page news. Apparently, Marcus had been using his mom's login to remotely access student records, including locker combos. Then he'd just pop any lockers that looked promising and swipe whatever valuables he could find. When Jerry put out that call for victims to come forward, he racked up an insane number of charges against Marcus and his mom. Each locker break-in counted as at least a misdemeanor, unless the stolen goods were over $1,000, which made it a felony rap. In less than a week, Jerry filed 9 felonies and 35 misdemeanors on those 2. It was the biggest case he'd worked in years in our little town. Here's the scheme Jerry explained to me. He had me deliberately bait my own locker by stashing an expensive tracked laptop, knowing it would get knocked off. That gave him the legal pretext to search wherever the laptop ended up and nail the perps with felony-level theft charges based on the laptop's high value. Among the stolen goods they recovered were 8 other felony-level thefts, like jewelry and whatnot. Any locker hit under $1,000 in value was a misdemeanor charge. The crazy part, my graphing calculator theft and the laptop were separate incidents, with my locker combo changed in between. So thanks to me, Jerry nailed both a felony and misdemeanor charge, just off my locker. Those 9 felonies totaled over $12,000 in thefts, while the 35 misdemeanors were around $3,000 in stolen goods. But here's the kicker. That's just the stuff they could prove and trace back to a victim. Who knows how many other lockers got popped over the year that didn't get reported or couldn't be tied to the evidence. The county threw the book at Marcus and his mom too. No plea deals. This was the biggest crime spree in our county in decades, so they made an example of it. After the criminal charges, all the students who got charged those ridiculous $120 fees for locker combo changes banded together for a class action lawsuit against the school district. The whole basis was that the school failed to properly investigate reports of locker break-ins, yet kept charging kids to get new combos and fattening their pockets. 218 students were part of that class. After legal fees, we each got an $85 settlement. Not much, but it was the principal. Oh, and the principal? Yeah, he got straight up fired for botching this whole disaster. See, the school paid $120 per locker combo change originally, but then they had to pay back $100 per student due to the settlement. Do the math. That's $21,800 the school district got soaked, plus whatever they spent on legal fees for the lawsuit. Karma's a you-know-what. As for Marcus and his mom at their criminal trial, the prosecutor offered them a deal of 10 years in prison for Marcus, 5 juvenile, 5 adult, and 15 years for his mom. They turned it down like idiots. Instead, Marcus caught 1 year per felony, the minimum, plus 1 month probation per misdemeanor. That's 9 years in prison, plus nearly 3 more years of probation to follow. His mom got completely demolished. 18 years in actual prison time, plus 6 years of probation after that. I cheek burned to her sentencing just to see her face. In court, they had video evidence of Marcus breaking into over 20 lockers. They were caught with stolen goods matching every single charge, too. The judge pointed out there were probably more break-ins they couldn't prove, given the scale of the thefts. He wasn't playing around. Marcus's mom got utterly destroyed, though. I'll just say it was one heck of a dramatic court viewing experience for a high school kid. Oh, and one last thing. The highlight? I got my graphing calculator back at the end of it all. It had my name engraved inside, so it was a legit keeper with a cool story behind it now. I still have it to this day as a little souvenir of justice. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my apartment building for over 5 years now, and for the most part it's been pretty uneventful. The landlord is decent, the rent is affordable, and the neighbors keep to themselves. Well, most of them anyway. There's this one woman, Karen, who lives in the unit below me. Right from the start, she rubbed me the wrong way. She just had this entitled, know-it-all attitude that drove me nuts. But I tried to avoid conflict and stay civil. That is, until the parking dispute happened. You see, our building has a small parking lot in the back with about 12 spaces that are meant for tenants only. It's first come, first served. Well, I drive a pickup truck for work, so I was always careful to park in the spots along the perimeter of the lot since they're bigger and can fit my truck. Never had any issues over the years parking back there. That is, until Karen moved in last year. Right away, she started complaining that my truck took up too much room in the compact car spots. I kindly explained that there were no designated compact spots, it was just an open lot, but she wouldn't let it go, insisting I was hogging precious parking real estate from the appropriate vehicles. I started avoiding the perimeter spots just to keep the peace. But soon Karen began claiming certain spots in the middle were hers too, since she needed to be close to the entrance. If I dared to take one of her spots, she'd leave threatening notes on my windshield about having me towed. One day I came home to find a bright orange tow sticker slapped on my truck's window. The audacity! I ripped it off and barged downstairs to give Karen a piece of my mind. She claimed she had warned me not to park in her spot again. I argued it wasn't her spot at all. Things got heated. The landlord had to get involved to mediate. In the end, I was told to be more considerate about parking. Karen got no reprimand at all. I reluctantly agreed to try and smooth things over, mostly just to get her off my back. But the parking spot squabbles persisted. Anytime I took a spot Karen deemed hers, she'd call the tow company. I'd race downstairs and move my truck just in time, but the hassle was ridiculous. Why should I tiptoe around this obnoxious woman? One Saturday morning I came out to a real nightmare. My truck was gone. Karen had made good on her threat. I saw her peeking smugly through her curtains, obviously proud of herself. Well, this was the last straw. I called the tow yard and begrudgingly paid the $200 fee to get my truck back. But I wasn't about to let Karen get away with this. First, I reread my lease agreement to confirm the parking rules. Just as I thought, open lot, first come first served. No assigned spots whatsoever. Then I made some calls to past tenants who had complained about parking disputes with Karen. Apparently, this had been an issue long before I moved in. Armed with statements from other tenants and my clear lease terms, I took Karen to small claims court for wrongfully having my vehicle towed. The judge reviewed the evidence and immediately ruled in my favor. Karen turned pale. She clearly assumed I'd just drop it. Nope. But the victory was short-lived. Karen doubled down, leaving threatening messages and slashing my tires twice in 1 month. She denied it, of course, but who else would do that? I installed security cameras which clearly captured Karen in the act of vandalism. Back to court we went. Another win for me. At this point, I was feeling pretty burned out dealing with this unhinged neighbor. I gave my landlord notice and started hunting for a new place. Then came the real game changer. I was at my wit's end trying to explain the parking drama to a friend. He asked a simple question. Who owns that parking lot anyway? A quick check of the property records showed the lot actually belonged to me. Well, my unit. When I bought my apartment, ownership of that portion of land transferred to me. I went straight to the landlord for an explanation. Turns out, when our building was converted to condos years back, the parking lot parcels had been divided up and attached to each unit's deeds. Karen didn't own exclusive rights to any spots because it wasn't a shared lot at all. It was just my individual property that I allowed other tenants to use. Well, you bet Karen got a big warning notice from my lawyer about trespassing and vandalism on my property. One more towing incident or slit tire and I'd have her arrested. Karen turned into a model tenant overnight once she realized I could ban her outright from my lot. No more parking drama. She keeps her head down now anytime we cross paths. I almost feel bad for how smug I am driving my truck into any spot I want these days. But after all the harassment I endured, it feels pretty damn good to finally put Karen in her place. She picked the wrong guy to mess with. The next one is a petty revenge story. I own a small business and have been renting a unit in a complex for about a decade. A few years ago, the longtime owner of the complex sold the property to a new group. Initially, they made some nice improvements to the property, updating signage, repaving the parking lot, painting the facade, and some other cosmetic work. The terms of my original lease were that the owner of the property handled all repairs to vital infrastructure, plumbing, roofing, etc. The previous owner thought that should be his responsibility since it was his property at the end of the day. During the course of some of the renovations, the power to my AC unit was cut. I didn't realize it as it was winter time when the repairs happened. I run a business where we don't need the heat, and I only run the AC in the late spring through summer. So there's literally a few months where we're not using the HVAC at all. I called my property manager, and he proceeded to tell me it wasn't their problem, and that the terms of our lease were now NNN. Luckily, it was just an issue with the outlet, and I was able to switch the plug with no issues or additional cost to me. There have been a few other issues that the management refused to address that have been mildly infuriating, namely their repeated insistence that we have a triple net lease. A few months later, we had a water leak. The valve to toilet had failed. Once again, the landlord tried to tell me it was my issue, but I fought back this time and produced a copy of my lease that clearly stated that all water-related issues are management's problem. I don't pay for water or gas utility, and it's included in my rent. This is going to be important later. Begrudgingly, he sent a plumber to repair the toilet. While he was here, I mentioned that our utility sink was also dripping and he should have the plumber look at it. He declined to do so. The drippy faucet has turned into a pretty steady stream. We tried turning the water off at the valves, but the old gate valves have so much calcium buildup they still won't close all the way. I have mentioned it to our landlord repeatedly and still no repair. It's been about a year, and the faucet continues to consistently run. My dad was a plumber for a while, and I'm perfectly capable of fixing the issue, but out of spite, I refuse to. I had small leak at my house once, and it drove my bill almost $100 for the month over normal. I figure at least $1,000 in water has literally gone down the drain. Not to mention, the water is also being heated by the gas water heater. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So I work in cybersecurity. One point I worked for a managed security services provider or outsourced cybersecurity. Had a manager who was surrounded by yes men who worshipped him as awesome, which based on some stuff he showed I wasn't impressed, but that's irrelevant. He wanted to start stealing malicious site detections by various vendors and resale the data as proprietary threat intelligence, culmination of data mined by actual threat researchers. Sorry, not steal, redistribute for a fee. Anyway, I told this dude you want this data as a report, not an email alert. If you do this as an email alert, you'll generate about 4 million emails in a day for just one of our customers, who will remain nameless. Bark bark, woof woof, reports aren't real-time enough, needs to be email alert. Cool, so to make sure I'm understanding clearly, you are saying turn it on. All of this conversation was via email, of course. You got it, boss, and I did as I was told. Later the same night, I get added to a critical call. Customer identified an email coming from their SAIM to the tune of 3 million messages and wanted to know why we enabled this. This same director asks me why it was turned on, telling the customer I'm the one responsible for building the ways we detect threats. Absolutely, team. I apologize. I had attempted to have our leadership reconsider this requirement as it would adversely impact your environment to the tune of 4 million emails. Let me forward the communication to all of us on the bridge. Do you all want me to turn off this rule? Yes. Absolutely. I just forwarded the email thread. Manager, looks like you were the one who authorized and made the decision to turn it on despite the risk, and I went ahead and disabled the rule. Dude got promoted to VP, and I was no longer involved in threat monitoring, so I'm pretty sure he controlled the narrative very well, but I enjoyed my moment of listening to the customer bring legal and discuss cancellations and repercussions. I left and am now the proud owner of a cybersecurity product for biomed and facility devices. The next one is an entitled people story. I, 20F at the time, and my wife, 21F at the time, are the first people in our group of friends to move out on our own. We have a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, and we use the second bedroom as an office for my wife's side business and hobbies. A friend, 21F, from high school that we haven't talked to since graduation recently had gotten into contact with us to reconnect with my wife. They were friends. I was more of an acquaintance with her. They both had some similar personal experiences since high school that I won't get into, but it basically led to her friend being kicked out of her parents' house and was now living with her aunt. Wife invited her over to hang out, and when she was over, I noticed the apartment perpendicular to ours was vacant and being renovated, so I offhandedly joked, "Oh, wouldn't it be so cool if you moved into there? It would be like friends." The following conversation went something like this. Friend: "Oh, that would be cool. Is it available?" Me: "I mean, they're renovating it right now, but I'm not sure if someone is in line for it. You should call the office Monday and ask." Friend: "Oh, okay. Now, seems perfectly normal and logical, right? Apparently not. I would not be able to predict what this would lead to in the following month if I was freaking Doctor Strange. So, 2 days later, it's my wife's birthday. We go on a day trip to Frankenmuth. Friend calls wife up and asks if she could spend the weekend at our place, saying she got into an argument with her aunt. Wife and I say sure, but we won't be back until late because of our trip. She says that's fine. She proceeds to text my wife almost hourly asking if we were on our way back yet and that she was just waiting under the bridge near our place. We ignore her after the third-ish text until we are on our way back. It's about 1 a.m. when we come home, and we're both so tired we basically told her to take the couch and she was free to use our Netflix and that we were going to sleep. The next morning, my wife has already left for work. I walk into the living room to feed the cats, and I see that the friend has almost moved into the apartment. I'm talking fairy lights on above the couch, baskets of her clothes lined up against the wall. The couch is covered in her anime body pillows, which I did not expect, let me tell you. And she's laying back chillin' playing a ukulele, so I'm confused to say the least. I kind of just wave at her because I'm still waking up and I'm not entirely sure I'm not hallucinating. So I go into the kitchen and my sink is filled with dirty dishes, the counter has open jars of something, and it's basically a mess and 100% not how it was left last night. And I know for a fact it was not my wife who made the mess. I don't want to be rude without knowing the full story, and honestly I barely know this girl. So I feed the cats and go back to my room to text my wife a basically, "Hey, WTF is happening right now" text. I basically stay in my room the whole day to avoid her, and I wait for my wife to come home to handle whatever this is. To summarize the main parts of the next month, the story goes something like this. Friend went home from the original hangout and basically told her aunt we had an apartment lined up for her so she was moving out. Aunt thought it was all so sudden that something wasn't right. Friend ignores her and basically asks if she can stay with us. Wife says yes, assuming she's staying for a few days. Friend then reveals that she plans to stay with us until the apartment across was open and ready for her. She has not applied or was approved for the apartment. We try to politely nudge her into applying into apartments around the area since we kinda don't know what to do with this information. She then sees a few days later a man moving into the apartment she apparently thought was hers and asks me what is going on. I proceed to tell her she didn't apply for the apartment, so I don't really know what she was expecting. I ask if she's applied to any apartments. She says no. I tell my wife to talk some sense into her friend. A few days later, I come home to, again, lounging with fairy lights and a ukulele on my couch. I ask if she's applied to apartments. She says no and that she can't because she doesn't have income since she quit her job when moving. I ask if she's applied to any jobs. She says no. At this point, it's been about 2 weeks and she has made my apartment a mess. She would leave dirty dishes and trash on my coffee table and in my sink, would sing and make noise constantly, and was frankly just overstaying her welcome beyond making me feel like a maid all of a sudden. So I politely bully my wife into fixing this since she's her friend and invited her in the first place. Wife takes her apartment hunting and friend has something to complain about with each one. Ceilings are too low, windows aren't big enough, that kind of thing. By the end of the day, wife is frustrated and friend turns to her and says the sentence that is the final nail in the coffin. I think the universe is telling me I'm supposed to stay with you guys in your apartment. To which my wife responds, the universe will bend, and then proceeds to take her to a hotel and make her stay there. Wife moves her stuff out of our apartment and into her car while talking to her like, what do you want to do with your life? And the conversation basically leads to my wife convincing her to buy a van and renovate and live in that and travel. The next day she asks if she can come back to our apartment. I tell my wife to tell her absolutely not and to stay at the hotel or go back to her aunt's. She ends up staying with her parents until she gets a van and then spends a month renovating it and then drives to LA while making music in her van. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.